A 19-year-old Stanford dropout claimed she could revolutionize healthcare with a single drop of blood. She convinced America's most powerful people to invest $900 million in technology that never actually worked. Former secretaries of state, four-star generals, and billionaire dynasties all fell for her elaborate deception. She graced magazine covers, spoke at prestigious conferences, and became Silicon Valley's youngest female billionaire. But behind the black turtlenecks and deep voice was one of the most audacious frauds in corporate history. This is the jaw-dropping story of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos, where fake it till you make it became criminal conspiracy. Elizabeth Holmes entered Stanford at 17, studying chemical engineering with an obsessive focus on changing the world. She spent every summer working in laboratories, convinced that traditional blood testing was outdated and barbaric. Her fear of needles combined with her uncle's death from cancer sparked a revolutionary idea. What if hundreds of tests could be performed using just a tiny drop of blood from a finger prick? In 2003, at just 19 years old, Holmes dropped out of Stanford to pursue her vision full-time. She used her tuition money to start Theranos, a combination of therapy and diagnosis. Holmes idolized Steve Jobs, adopting his black turtleneck uniform and cultivating an eerily deep voice. She promised to make blood testing painless, fast, and accessible to everyone at a fraction of the cost. Holmes had an extraordinary ability to convince brilliant, accomplished people to believe in her impossible dream. She recruited Stanford professor Channing Robertson as her first advisor, lending immediate credibility to her venture. By 2004, she had raised $6 million from venture capitalists despite having no working prototype. Holmes hired top engineers from Apple and other tech giants, promising them the chance to revolutionize healthcare. She created a culture of extreme secrecy, making employees sign aggressive NDAs and threatening legal action for any leaks. Different teams were completely isolated from each other, preventing anyone from seeing the full picture. When engineers raised concerns about the technology not working, Holmes would fire them immediately. Meanwhile, she continued presenting to investors with absolute confidence, claiming breakthrough after breakthrough. The company developed the Edison device, a sleek black box supposedly capable of running hundreds of tests from drops of blood. Holmes assembled one of the most prestigious boards in corporate history, filled with political and military legends. Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, joined the board and became one of Holmes's biggest champions. George Shultz, another former Secretary of State, was so convinced he invested his family's money. General James Mattis, future Secretary of Defense, pushed to get Theranos devices deployed in Afghanistan. These titans had zero medical or scientific expertise, but their names alone attracted hundreds of millions in investments. The Walton family, owners of Walmart, invested $150 million based purely on the board's reputation. Rupert Murdoch personally invested $125 million, becoming Theranos' largest individual investor. By 2010, Theranos had raised over $400 million without ever proving their technology actually worked. In 2013, Holmes achieved her biggest breakthrough, a partnership with Walgreens to offer Theranos tests nationwide. Walgreens invested $140 million and planned to install Theranos wellness centers in thousands of stores. Safeway grocery stores also partnered with Theranos, spending $350 million renovating stores for testing centers. Holmes appeared on the covers of Fortune, Forbes, and Inc. magazine, hailed as the next Steve Jobs. She gave TED Talks, appeared on Charlie Rose, and spoke at prestigious medical conferences worldwide. By 2014, Theranos was valued at $9 billion, making Holmes the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. She owned 50% of the company, putting her net worth at $4.5 billion. But behind the scenes, Theranos employees were desperately trying to hide a terrifying secret. The Edison devices that Holmes showcased to investors were elaborate props that couldn't perform any real tests. When demonstrations were required, employees would secretly collect blood samples and rush them to traditional machines. Theranos was actually using competitors, equipment from Siemens and other companies, diluting tiny blood samples to dangerous levels. This dilution process produced wildly inaccurate results that could literally kill patients with wrong diagnoses. Real patients were receiving false HIV results, incorrect cancer markers, and dangerously wrong medication dosages. One patient was told she was having a miscarriage when she wasn't, causing devastating emotional trauma. Another patient received incorrect blood clotting results that could have led to a fatal stroke. Whistleblowers who tried to raise concerns were threatened with lawsuits and followed by private investigators. Holmes and her boyfriend, company president Sunny Balwani, created a culture of fear and intimidation. Tyler Schultz, grandson of board member George Schultz, started working at Theranos fresh out of Stanford. He immediately noticed the company was manipulating quality control tests and falsifying data. When he raised concerns internally, Holmes personally berated him and threatened his career. Tyler secretly reached out to Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou with evidence of the fraud. Another whistleblower, Erica Chung, provided detailed documentation of the fake test results. Holmes hired the most expensive lawyers in America to stop the story, threatening the journal with devastating lawsuits. She even convinced Rupert Murdoch, who owned the journal, to try killing the investigation. Tyler's grandfather sided with Holmes, causing a painful rift that tore the Schultz family apart. The Schultz family spent over $400,000 in legal fees, defending Tyler from Theranos' attacks. On October 15, 2015, the Wall Street Journal published Carreyrou's devastating front-page investigation. The article revealed that Theranos was running fake demonstrations and endangering patients' lives. Holmes went on a media blitz, appearing on CNBC to aggressively deny all allegations. She accused the journal of conspiracy, claiming competitors were trying to destroy her revolutionary company. But federal regulators had already begun their own investigation, finding shocking violations at every level. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services found Theranos posed immediate jeopardy to patient health. In 2016, regulators banned Holmes from operating any laboratory for 2 years. Walgreens immediately terminated their partnership and sued Theranos for $140 million. Partner after partner abandoned Theranos, and investors realized they had been completely deceived. In March 2018, the Securities and Exchange Commission charged Holmes with massive fraud. She agreed to pay $500,000 and give up control of Theranos without admitting guilt. But the criminal charges came 3 months later: conspiracy to commit wire fraud against investors and patients. If convicted, Holmes faced up to 20 years in federal prison and millions in fines. Theranos officially dissolved in September 2018, with investors losing nearly $1 billion. Holmes's trial was delayed multiple times, during which she married a hotel heir and had 2 children. In her defense, she claimed Sunny Balwani had controlled and abused her throughout their relationship. On January 3, 2022, after 7 days of deliberation, the jury found Holmes guilty on 4 counts of fraud. She was sentenced to 11 years and 3 months in federal prison, starting in April 2023. The Theranos scandal fundamentally changed how Silicon Valley evaluates and invests in startups. Investors now demand actual proof of technology before writing massive checks based on promises. The prestigious board members who enabled Holmes faced public humiliation, but no legal consequences. George Shultz finally apologized to his grandson Tyler before passing away in 2021. Sunny Balwani was convicted separately and sentenced to 13 years in prison for his role. The whistleblowers, especially Tyler Shultz and Erica Chung, became heroes for risking everything to expose the truth. Patients who received false results filed lawsuits, though many health impacts could never be fully measured. John Carreyrou's investigation won numerous journalism awards and became a best-selling book called Bad Blood. The Theranos story isn't just about corporate fraud. It's about the dangerous intersection of ambition and deception. Elizabeth Holmes weaponized Silicon Valley's "fake it till you make it" culture to endanger thousands of lives. She proved that with enough confidence and the right connections, you can convince anyone of anything. Even the smartest, most accomplished people can be fooled by a compelling story and a black turtleneck. The real tragedy is that Holmes's vision of accessible, affordable blood testing could have genuinely saved lives. Instead, her obsession with success at any cost created a $9 billion house of cards built on lies. Today, Elizabeth Holmes sits in federal prison, a cautionary tale about the price of deception. If this shocking story of medical fraud fascinated you, subscribe for more incredible tales of startup disasters and corporate deception.